up, guys? Welcome to another quick summaries video. For those of you who don't know what this channel is, feel free to check out my introduction video. But if you don't want to do that, for whatever the reason, basically I am not a review channel, and this video is chock full of spoilers. So if that's not what you were hoping for, if you're afraid that's going to actually ruin the movie for you instead of enrich it for whatever reason, I suggest you find something else to watch. But for the rest of you, welcome. You're in the right place. Today's video we're talking about Bird Box, which is a 2018 Netflix film starring
Sandra Bullock, Sarah Paulson, Trevante Rhodes, and John Malkovich. And
Machine Gun Kelly is in it for like a split second. This movie is about a global epidemic, a mysterious force that causes people to commit suicide whenever they see it. And it only affects people outside, and the only exception is that the criminally insane are not affected by it in the same way that other people are. They don't commit suicide. They think it's beautiful, and they actually try to get other people to look at it by like forcing their eyes open or whatever. And that's the only exception, and that's important going forward. But this movie centers around a pregnant woman named Malorie, and as a global epidemic makes its way to where she lives, she finds herself in the middle of the street, surrounded by turmoil, and she watches her sister walk into a moving bus. And she is ushered into this house where there is a group of strangers that have banded together to protect themselves inside this house. And as time goes by, they find ways to survive. Like, they realize that birds can alert them to the presence of the mysterious force because they kind of go berserk whenever the presence is nearby. And so really not a whole lot happens during that time period because they're staying indoors. They're not really affected by what's happening outside. They're just like indoors surviving. But after some time passes, they get a knock on their door, and this other pregnant woman named Olympia, who's very sensitive and soft, she lets him in, and his name is Gary. And Douglas, who's kind of made himself like the boss of the situation in the house, he's very much against letting in a new stranger, but the rest of the group is like, let Gary stay, let Gary in. And so he does. But that's not wise, because it turns out that Gary is criminally insane and is just masking it very well. And so when Olympia and Malorie give birth at the same time, Gary chooses that moment to disclose that he's kind of not affected in the same way. And so as these women have just given birth, he's going around and he's opening the windows and tearing off the blinds and the newspaper coverings and forcing people's eyes open. And this goes on until Tom comes out and kills Gary. And by this point, though, everybody is dead except for Tom, Malorie, and the two babies, who she names Boy and Girl. So 5 years pass, and Tom, Malorie, and Boy and Girl have formed a sort of family together, and Malorie has taught Boy and Girl these survival lessons, and she's going around looting these abandoned houses for supplies, and Tom is trying to make contact with other people over a radio. And one day, he does get in touch with somebody, this guy named Rick, and he's saying that he has a compound up the river, over the rapids, and they have tons of birds, and that they should be safe there, they should come if they can. And Malorie's like, that's super sketchy, I don't know about it. And Tom's like, we have no other options. And they're kind of right, because a group of criminally insane people invades their house, and so Tom says, I'll stay here and distract them and fight them. You go on to the river, find the compound. And so Malorie's like, oh, okay, bye. And so she and Boy and Girl get blindfolds, and they go rowing up the river for 2 days. And they're carrying birds that they got at the grocery store and that they had in the house in this box. That way they can be alerted to any of the forces nearby and around them, because the birds will make all this sound. Hence the name Bird Box. And they fight like a whole bunch of problems, and Tom actually ends up dying, so he never rejoins them. But they eventually make it to the compound, and it's actually a school for the blind. And so now that Malorie feels safe and secure and has stability, she allows herself to actually feel a connection and be connected to Boy and Girl, and gives them proper names, Olympia and Tom. And that's the end of the movie. The end of the movie is about finding connection in a world where you don't feel connected to people and have a hard time connecting, where you feel otherwise isolated. You allow yourself to give in and give that affection and love to somebody else. Some notable scenes you need to be aware of are when Malorie, boy and girl, are in the canoe and they're blindfolded, and you first start to hear this criminally insane person trying to convince them to take off their blindfold, and it escalates into this huge fight where he's trying to wrestle this gun away from Malorie, like in the water. Like he makes his way into the river and is like fighting Malorie for like her gun and her hammer and all this stuff, and trying to get her to take the blindfolds off the kids so that they can see this beautiful thing. And super intense. Another scene you need to be aware of is the grocery store scene, which is their first time adventuring out with blindfolds into the world. And then another scene you need to be aware of is when Malorie, boy and girl are making their way to the compound and they're blindfolded and they're trekking through the woods and they get separated, and the mysterious force is playing tricks on them orally, and so Malorie hears the voice of Tom, and he's saying, "Look at me, it's Tom, like we can be together, take off your blindfold and look at me." And then boy and girl are hearing the voice of Malorie saying, you know, "Take off your blindfold, we're safe now, like take it off." And you know, they're kids, they don't really know what to think. They're like, "But I thought you said it wasn't safe to do that." And so they eventually do get reunited and they overcome that voice, but this is the most intense part of the movie. I think I'll put some quotes down in the description for you to nose through. Something else you need to be aware of, just as far as cultural phenomena go, is that this movie inspired something called the Bird Box Challenge, in which people would put on blindfolds and try to do everyday tasks blindfolded, like walking through their house or driving, which is a terrible idea, super dangerous. So just that disclaimer, now you know what the Bird Box Challenge is. Don't do it. That's the end of the video. If you like this video, like the video, subscribe, comment, tell me what you liked, what you don't, what movie you'd like for me to unpack for you next time. But until then, see you around, or not if I'm wearing a blindfold.